That's your right if you don't speak both. You can see a large cliff face with a thick U-shaped line separating it from the rest of the rim. This feature is known as Lao Rock. If you chose to stand atop Lao Rock, say 8,000 years ago, give or take, and you looked down, you would see this big, beautiful, impossibly blue lake, but rather just rock. In fact, if you looked up, you would be staring at the base of a 12,000-foot mountain that you have not even reached the summit of. Today, we call that mountain Mazama. Its summit would have sat nearly a mile above where we're floating now. Was that a composite volcano? Sorry, I just realized that having a rain slick on my backpack is worthless if I've got it turned towards the rain. Mazama was what's known as a composite volcano, a volcano composed of many different types of lava. Much of the mountain was built up by material erupting from lava fountains, like we see today in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, creating a ginormous monolith that could be seen. But there was trouble really below the surface. A large volume of silica-rich magma began to accumulate deep underground. About 30,000 years ago, that silica-rich magma began to produce increasingly explosive eruptions. And those very eruptions created the feature we see before us. Lao Rock is the highest vertical precipice on the rim. It's made of hardened lava and came from an eruption just 100 to 200 years before Mount Mazama's final collapse. If the eruption was the main course, think of Lao as an appetizer. This is the result of a two-part eruption. The first part was explosive. It blasted material from the surface of the volcano, creating a large crater. The second part was a large lava flow that filled that crater. It's a little bit like if you've ever seen a tree with a gash in it. It's almost as though the mountain was closing a wound. As I noted earlier, if you look at the base of the cliff, you can clearly see the outline of that wound. Can everyone see the white U-shapes cradling the rock? If you look close, you can see that lava actually overflowed from the sides of the original crater, creating those large wings on either side. Rising nearly 2,000 feet above the lake, taller than the World Trade Center, the tallest building in the U.S. When the mountain collapsed, Lao Rock was sheared in half. So what we see today is actually a cross-section of the original flow that filled that crater, which was only revealed once the mountain collapsed. After the eruption that formed Lao Rock, the mountain was quiet for a time, but the magma chamber was growing, and pressure was building. At the time of its catastrophic eruption, it is believed that the magma chamber held a staggering 25 cubic miles of material. Eventually, so much pressure built up inside that the mountain could no longer contain it. And about 7,700 years ago, in one of the Cascade chain's largest eruptions ever, a catastrophic event. The eruption started with a single vent opening on the side of the mountain. This vent shot an ash cloud nearly 30 miles up into the air, high enough to reach the stratosphere. As the eruption progressed, a ring of vents opened around the mountain, and over the course of what we believe is just a few days, more than 14 cubic miles of volcanic material was released. Ash from the eruption blanketed much of the Pacific Northwest. There are heavy concentrations of Mazama ash in 8 different states and 3 Canadian provinces. My house, about 45, well, no, it's not. It's 45 minutes away from the southern entrance station and about an hour and a half away from Fleetwood Cove Trail. All Mazama ash. Farms in Montana, Mazama ash. Mazama ash has been found at the bottom of Lake Superior and in the ice cores of Greenland. They say that the sound from the eruption was so incredibly loud, it could be heard all the way where modern St. Louis, Missouri sits. So much volcanic ash and material was released that it is believed that the Mazama eruption affected the weather in the entire northern hemisphere for as much as 3 years. Now, we don't really think in cubic measurements that often, so it's something that's a little difficult to conceptualize. For example, most people are surprised to learn that a 5-gallon bucket only contains 0.7 cubic. So picturing how much is in a cubic mile, let alone 14 of them, is extremely difficult. So follow me here. If you loaded ash onto standard rail cars, it would take over 5 million train cars to carry away 14 cubic miles of it. Which sounds like a really large train, but before I tell you, it will wrap around the Earth more than twice. As the eruption slowed, the column began to collapse, dropping millions of pounds of material right back down onto the mountain. Superheated pyroclastic flows ran down the mountain, some traveling more than 40 miles and depositing material hundreds of feet deep. Removing so much material from the magma chamber, combined with the weight of all the new material pressing down from on top, meant that the mountain could no longer support its own weight. The summit collapsed inward, forming the vast crater, or more accurately, caldera, that we're sailing through today. A crater is typically formed from the surface, where material is blown outward into debris fields. started to process the form lava rock shortly before it filled. In contrast, a caldera forms when ground from a train like collapses. So the old site of Mount Mazama is not sitting in pieces scattered across our local landscape. It's actually underneath us, somewhere at the bottom of the lake. In the thousands of years, snow have filled our caldera, creating Crater Lake. No rivers or streams feed it, just the sky. Exhibit A, the sky feeding it. All right. Years old. So we don't know for certain how long he's been cruising around the water. If you'd like to get a look at him, he happens right now to be coming up on the starboard side of the boat. He floats vertically in the water and he's so incredibly stable that he appears to be chained down to the bottom. However, if once we get a little closer, if you would like to stand up and look carefully over the edge, you might be able to see the shadow of his root ball, where you can clearly see that nothing is attached. So he's free to move around, explore as he sees fit, which he's quite happy to do. He's so incredibly stable, in fact, that in the wooden tour boat days, rangers guiding the tours would often get out of the boat and stand on the old man while they talked about him. Which, before you ask, no, I will not be doing today. However, the dock master who checked you guys in has been doing boat tours for so incredibly long, there's a photograph of him standing on the old man. Bottom. It's raining. This is why I occasionally glance at my script. There we go. Many people believe his movement often seems to be fast in nature. He might sit stock still in strong winds, and he might move miles against the wind in a single day. The way he moves around the lake and why is a complete mystery. There are countless stories about the old man and his strange powers, but I'll just give you a couple of them today. In 1988, Oregon State University, NPS, and the USGS ran the first man-submersible mission to the bottom of the lake. Researchers had a lot of concern about the old man. There were going to be support boats on the surface, divers in the water, equipment, and tethers everywhere. There was a concern that the old man could pose a safety risk should he wander into the area. So they proposed that for everyone's safety, it would be best to chain him to the dock where he couldn't cause any trouble. Naturally, the old man would not stand for this injustice. The next day, researchers arrived to begin their expedition, and the sky darkened. Clouds enveloped the lake, and it began to storm. They had no choice but to cancel the work for the day. Okay, that's fine. There's always tomorrow. But the next day dawned much the same, clouds and storms, and by the third day, concern was mounting. They had a very limited window to get this research done, and delays were costly. Finally, someone suggested that they drive over to Lizard Island and free the old man. Couldn't hurt, right? So that's exactly what they did. They drove over to Wizard Island, freed the old man, and the next day dawned with a breath of wind. The manned submersible mission went off without issue, and the old man kindly stayed out of the way. When GPS technology reached a point where it was small enough to feasibly attach a tracking collar to the old man, researchers decided it would be a great opportunity to try and study his head-scratching movements and figure out what drives his travels around the lake. So they went out to the water, put a tracker on him, and evidently the old man values his privacy just as much as he values his freedom, because he stood stock still and refused to cooperate. Eventually, they gave up, removed the tracker, and the old man immediately moved out of the area and continued his journey around the lake. Now, I am not a particularly superstitious person. I don't believe in ghosts. I think all psychics are charlatans and liars, and you cannot convince me that Bigfoot is real. But if there's one supernatural thing you could get me to believe, it might be that tree. Had you been here earlier in the season, you might have seen a big gray box that said NPS in black Sharpie on it. That was a tracking collar, as they were once again trying to study his movements. They put it on him last winter, and from what I hear, batteries died in March. Ever persistent though, NPS went out and changed the batteries, and at the start of the season, it was allegedly working. But I will note that this has been one of the messiest, most chaotic startups to boat tours we have ever had in the decades we have been doing this. Every year, the old man is waiting to greet us in Fleetwood Cove as though he missed us, but not this year. Instead, he was out in the middle of the lake and a little bit hard to find. You might have heard at the beginning of the season there was a rock slide that closed Fleetwood Trail for about 2 weeks and delayed our training. And then when NPS was cleaning that up, when they were almost finished cleaning up the rock slide, there was a second rock slide. And I don't know how much I believe in the old man, but I find our circumstances combined with his circumstances to be a little compelling, thought-provoking, as it were. Allegedly, NPS wants to one day build a website where you can see a map with his movements around the lake and check where he is at any given time. Which seems like such an invasion of his privacy. I would be mad, too. Everyone say goodbye to the old man. Goodbye, old man. I love you. It's too wet. Now. Fantastic. The lowest part of the backbone is about 250 feet tall and is only about 25 feet wide. And the widest part of the backbone is only 40 feet, or roughly the length of the boat we're all sitting in. This feature is what geologists call a volcanic dike, a vertical sheet of magma that forces its way up through the cracks in the surrounding rock. When an eruption releases enough pressure that is no longer strong enough to continue pushing material up through those cracks, what remains inside cools and seals up the opening, forming the aforementioned dike. It's a little bit like if you've ever squeezed ketchup out of a bottle, and there's that little bit that gets stuck in the tiny hole at the top, and the next time you go to open it, there's that gross plug of ketchup. It's like that, but a volcano. But unlike the ketchup, as it cooled and solidified, our dike formed a rock-solid structure. Over time, erosion wore away on the softer surrounding rock, leaving this dramatic spine of volcanic stone exposed. There are a number of other dikes around the Tall Berry, some of which you may have even noticed. But the Devil's Backbone is unique in that it's the only dike that runs all the way from the top of the rim to the edge of the water. This dike was acted as an underground feeder system to the vent that was near Hillman Peak, a kind of natural pipeline channeling molten rock up to the surface. It was active about 50,000 years ago, and that magma would have erupted as a lava flow, spreading across the mountain slopes. This was not an insignificant eruption. No. In fact, this eruption would have spread nearly 7 miles or 11 kilometers out from the mountain, but it was removed by glacial erosion in the last ice age. What makes the spine so much more durable than the flow that it created was the way that the magma cooled underground. This allowed it to cool more slowly and under pressure, forming a denser, more durable rock filled with large, strong crystals. So while the outside of the flow became what we know as andesite, the parts of the flow that never saw the light of day cooled into diorite, andesite's more durable sister. You should recognize both of those rocks if you've ever played Minecraft. So when you look at the Devil's Backbone, you're not just seeing a piece of Mount Mazama's ancient. You're not just seeing a volcanic feature. You're seeing a piece of Mount Mazama's ancient plumbing system, hardened from the inside out and tough enough to withstand thousands of years of weathering. Battled Lao, the spirit of the underworld. If you remember the first stop on today's tour, that name should sound familiar to you. According to time oral tradition, Lao lived beneath Mount Mazama and would sometimes rise to view the surface world above, causing eruptions. When one day, he spotted a beautiful woman from the planet Mars, named Lola. He tried to lure her down into his valley. She refused, saying she did not want to live in a mountain for the rest of her life, and Lao became enraged. cursing the people with fire and destruction. In response, Scale stood on the summit of Mount Shasta to defend the people. The two spirits clashed in a violent battle. Fire, ash, and lightning filled the sky, and after days of fighting, Scale emerged victorious, hurling Lao back into the underworld. To prevent the underworld god from ever daring to escape again, Scale collapsed from inward. That collapse formed the caldera we're sailing through today, and sealed Lao away forever. In some versions of the story, Scale proceeds to build the caldera in water, trapping Lao beneath the weight of the waves and restoring peace and tranquility to the area, which was now known as Nkoj, which means a sacred place. This end feels very fitting to me personally because don't you think we were from outer space? We don't have any rivers or streams in the lake. Instead, it all comes from the wind and snow. Scale's domain is sky. What's truly remarkable is how close in this oral tradition mirrors what geologists were only able to decades of study. In 1865, a Klamath leader named Halleck described Mount Mazama's destruction to a soldier named William Polvig, telling him that it had collapsed after a particularly violent eruption. Long before scientific tools and surveys, the Klamath people preserved a detailed understanding of this place, passed down through 7,000 years of oral tradition. They did not have a written language at the time. Interestingly, geologists and volcanologists would study Crater Lake for decades before, in 1902, Joseph Diller suggested that perhaps the mountain collapsed, rather than being blown apart, something the locals had known all along. Almost everything you see around you today wasn't created by the eruption that destroyed Mount Mazama, it was revealed by it. When the mountain collapsed, it stripped away the outer layers and exposed the deep hidden geology within. The cliffs, spires, and layers of rock had all been forming for hundreds of thousands of years below the surface. The eruption didn't build those features, but rather uncovered them. There are some exceptions, however. One of them is an iconic feature of the lake and is currently off the port side of the boat. Welcome to Wizard Island, a cinder cone volcano that geologists estimate began taking shape between 200 and 800 years after Mount Mazama's final collapse. So while it feels ancient to us, it's actually one of the younger features in the lake's story. Wizard Island is formed by the very same magma field Mount Mazama, so in a way, it's almost as though the mountain has started to rebuild itself. It's 760 feet tall, but if you measure it from the lake floor, it's actually more than 2,000 feet tall. In fact, only 2% of Wizard Island sits above the surface of the water. If you hike to the summit, there you will find the Witch's Cauldron, which is about 300 feet across and 90 feet deep. It holds the distinction of being the only actual crater left in Crater Lake National Park. So, just to summarize, Crater Lake is a caldera, and the Witch's Cauldron is a crater. Is everyone confused yet? Perfect. Wizard Island built up as the lake was filling. There are other cinder cones that started forming as the lake was filling, but only Wizard Island built up enough material to be seen above the surface of the water. And compared to Mazama, it's not exactly a 12,000 foot monolith. Even measuring from the lake bottom, it isn't especially large for a mountain. Part of the reason for that is that cinder cone volcanoes in general don't really get that big. They're formed when volcanoes spit cinders, porous gas-filled rock into the air, which are nearly solid by the time they hit the ground. In other words, cinder cone volcanoes are small because they're this pile of rocks, rather than one unshakable mountain. The most recent volcanic activity here at Crater Lake actually happened on the lake floor just east of here about 4,800 years ago. Sorry, I'm trying to skip parts of my script because we basically skipped on the Stealth Channel and I have to speed up. When magma oozed up onto the lake floor just east of here. This eruption didn't leave behind a cone, but it did create a large underwater lava dome, which is one of my favorite geologic terms because all I can think every single time is Sunday, Sunday, Sunday at the lava dome. Rio Dayside versus Pumice. Since then, the volcano has been cooled, though scientists must certainly agree it will wake up one day. Though I assure you, it will not be today. If you came here hoping to see a volcanic fireworks display, I have terrible news for you. We would know weeks in advance if this puppy were about to blow. Volcanoes are quite courteous in that way. In the thousands of years since, the island has... Come on, Chris. In the thousands of years of volcanic peace, the island has become home to a surprising variety of wildlife. Birds, insects, a unique variety of garter snake that's lost its characteristic yellow stripes in order to better blend in with the black rocks of our island. and lots of very mischievous golden-mantled ground squirrels, ready to raid your backpack and steal your snacks. You've probably seen some ground squirrels while you're waiting to board your boat today, and you may have even thought they were chipmunks. Very common mistake. They are, in fact, teach you all how to identify them. Chipmunks have stripes going all the way up their back, all the way over their head, and stopping at their nose. Ground squirrels, by contrast, have stripes only on their back. So if you took a photo of a golden-mantled ground squirrel and you photoshopped out everything but the head, you would be left staring at what's just a little squirrel face. No stripes included. But the question remains, how did these creatures get on the island in the first place? Did the birds carry them over? Did the ground squirrels slingshot themselves using the garter snake as a rubber band? The answer, honestly, really isn't that interesting. They probably just walked where the lake level was lower. Wizard Island was building up for hundreds of years as the lake was filling, and there was lots of time where there was land bridges. Once on the island, they found food, shelter, and very few predators, so they stuck around. I have a whole spiel about not feeding animals, but I don't really have time for it. Just in general, don't feed animals.
It makes them really aggressive, and when animals get aggressive, we have to, quote, do something about them. So for the sake of animals, if you really care about them, don't feed them. Anyway, some of you may have noticed by now that we do not have any boat ramps around the caldera. How can we get the boats down here? The answer is helicopters. CH-47 twin rotor Chinook helicopters.
chào ô tô họ ha, cả nó ha. Tiếng nào cũng xua.
산지에 발채야.
Vô lỡ chị tôi chỉ to mà sụi cho sao chiên cái hảo chỉ to tua sợ tính nào chị bỏ ra à chị cho hồi sáng Isha Luna, Isha Santo.
miserable are we on a scale of miserable enough to continue a boat tour to wanting to go back to the dock? No, that's like a genuine question. We're here? Okay.
Okay.
In 1870, on a farm near Oswego, Kansas, a 16-year-old boy named William Gladstone Steele sat down to eat his lunch. His sandwich had been carefully wrapped in a copy of the Oregonian, which had been sent out by his brother in Portland. As he ate his lunch, he began to read the newspaper that was wrapped in, and was mesmerized by one article in particular, a story about somewhere in the Southern Oregon Cascades. He knew he had to see it for himself one day. Just a few years later, his family left Kansas to join his and in 1885, he was finally able to make the journey to see Crater Lake with his very own eyes for the first time. The moment he saw it, he knew immediately that it must be protected. William Steele lived in a time of a blossoming conservation movement. For much of humanity's existence, nature has not been seen as a place of refuge, but rather as an obstacle to overcome. It was difficult to appreciate the beauty of a mountain lion when one was staring you down. It was consigned, and as a result, the barbarian woods are disgusting and should in fact be tamed. But as we slowly began to move away from fighting against the woods every day to being comfortable in our homes, the outdoors slowly began to be seen as a place of recreation in size, rather than one of danger. With this shift, Yellowstone National Park had recently been established, and Americans were beginning to embrace this idea of setting aside these natural places to be preserved for future generations. As soon as he returned to Portland from that first visit, Steele began to lobby to make Crater Lake a national park. In 1893, I think, largely thanks to Steele's efforts, a 4 million acre Cascade Forest Reserve was established by executive order. That was a precursor to several national forests that still exist today, as well as Crater Lake National Park. But that wasn't good enough. Steele continued to lead surveys, bring influential visitors, and lobby heavily on behalf of the area, and in 1902, after 17 years of tireless work, Crater Lake was officially designated as the nation's 5th national park. From the beginning, Steele believed that Crater Lake belonged to everyone. Now, as pristine as the lake looks, and as passionate as this place, it hasn't always been entirely untouched. William Steele believed that if more opportunities for recreation existed here at the water, that more people would be willing to visit, and therefore more motivated to but good intention with unfortunate consequences. One idea that occurred to him was that Crater Lake could be the world's premier fishing destination. An inspired idea. There was only one problem. It seems that when Skell so graciously filled this lake with rainwater, he forgot to make it rain fish as well. Steele set out to fix this glaring oversight all on his own, and in 1888, personally carried some fingerlings in a bucket and carried them all the way down to the lake. I need you to understand when I say this, that in 1888, Cleveland Cove Trail, the first trail actually left directly from the lodge. It was significantly steeper than the one you guys took today. Less switchbacks, lower cost. Eventually they decided this trail was not safe, and they made a new one, this time just outside the Rim Gift Shop, which also no longer exists. It was 25 switchbacks. Cleveland, by contrast, is 9, and it was removed for 2 main reasons. One, had you been here earlier in the season, you would have actually been able to see some snow resting on the first 2 switchbacks. In order to get people down to the water before it was winter all over again, NPS had to shovel the old trail. And 2, at the time, all of the amenities at Crater Lake were at the Rim Village. As the park got more and more popular, crowd control was becoming a bit of an issue. So in order to combat both of these issues, Park Service moved the trail to what is now known as Fleetwood Cove, a south-facing slope.
Nào lời chút xíu lời cho vào hả nó có vào nó chỉ lời lại nó đi cho chị chênh kẹo lại ôi là khó chị cụ ôi là khó là chẳng đúng không chỉ lưu mình sẽ biết tờ cái lưu lâu thôi có mua ha sẽ lưu mình Okay. This is supposed to be fun. I'm going to pose the question again to Scout is healing. Do you guys want to continue? Give me a thumbs up if you want to keep going. I see one person prepared by buying a poncho beforehand. She and I can go on a foot tour around the Christmas. It seems like most people want to go back. I am so sorry. This is supposed to be fun. So I think we're going to
think we're doing right now is supposed to be like a fun photo opportunity where we all stand up, and I don't think anybody wants to do that. So, since even my microphone wants to hit, I've never seen it do this before. Okay. I think it's wet. So, really quickly, since we're going to go back, you can't go back. Anybody like to have their water bottles filled from the lake? Let's get that done, and then let's just go back to the dock. As my microphone quits forever. Please stop. Please stop screaming. Please stop screaming. I beg of you.
Sao có vụ lì tao cá là vụ mua chứ có có vụ cài đó đó chị luôn lời lần còn một mùa mà hay là right over there. You see that geologic feature that kind of looks like a pair of goggles? It's right over there. The glacial deposit below it is basically gravel till. So the water can seep out through there where it goes under the ground. If you're wondering where that water goes after it leaves, we have no clue. We tried to figure it out in the 90s, couldn't really figure it out. I guess we were too busy doing skateboard tricks. Alright. We're going to do a ball jump around the phantom ship. Raise your hand if you want to. It is a good percentage of us. Yeah, I'm still gonna have it be this way. Normally I have a volunteer bring water bottles back to me, but there's so few of us who are basically gonna get the heck out of here that I'm just going to have everybody who wants their water bottle. I'll fill it up really quickly, and then we will move on. That's alright. We've got a fire bucket. Here goes my knees. They're wet. Yours? I've got to be here till like 7 p.m. anyway, so. While I'm filling water bottles. If you have one, say it really loud because I'm down on the dock. Đó là tin này chị trong này lúc nói trò sao nói trung giá thế nào chị phụ nè
Thì kệ này lúc nữa là lúc nữa sẽ là không chỗ sao lúc nữa.
If anybody's wondering what the temperature of the water is today,
Lúc
it's
bữa
high
chỗ
50s,
mũi
low
rồi có sợ nhớ
60s.
nữa rồi.
Compared to the air outside right now, putting my hand in the water feels like a bathtub.
Lúc đó sợ nhớ họ cũng thay ra chỗ họ đâu. Sợ họ mà.
Oh, this isn't even my main job. I teach children at an outdoor school about 15 minutes from our southern entrance station. Conveniently, our fall field trips start up on the 17th, and we finish work here on the
Sợ là
14th. So, I've timed this pretty accurately. I've got to write an astronomy lesson. Well, I've written it, but I need to make a really nice lesson plan for it. For 8th graders before the 17th, so I've got work to do. Oh, that's super cool. What college? I went to Western Illinois University for outdoor recreation. Well, I specifically went to RPTA, Recreational Parks and Tourism Administration, with an emphasis in outdoor rec. It was a very nice school for major, surprisingly, especially as a discovery major. Is there anybody who's wondering about all I missed? One? Okay. Reopen the door.
con nói thở có Oster.
There's a bucket right here. I'm gonna go.
Tôi tính nói thở. Cũng tí chạy to cơ mà. Cái này chỉ to à. Nếu lúc nó thay tiền nó chỉ bỏ.
It's not hot enough to really finish your water bottle today. There we go. All right. Any other water bottles?
Ôi lịch lại hở đâu.
Fantastic.
Tôi cái chữ cá chưa.
Anyway, that thing behind us is the Phantom ship. It's actually not a part of Mazama at all. It is an ancient stratovolcano cone that was eaten by Mount Mazama as it was growing. And once the mountain collapsed, it rained all here. It's 400,000 years old. Isn't that really neat? My butt.
Nó tu chẳng nó. Phải tao mà nạp lòng cơ mà chịu phục kế.
Hey guys, as a rule, and really for safety's sake, we don't cut across the middle of the lake. As you can imagine, a metal boat in a body of water with lightning potentially around keeps us closer to the cauldron. So we are going to continue around the same direction as the tour would be, and if it does completely stop, we can only stop at a couple of the major features. So you guys just let us know what you'd like to do, because it is your tour.
I always give you guys the quick notes at certain stops if you so desire it. We only after the Phantom ship at like 2 anyway. We got the skip tells me.
I vaguely talked about the Phantom ship.
Crater Lake is 1,943 feet. That is Crater Lake is like in the United States. It's technically like in North America and the 11th in the world. However, by average depth, Crater Lake is incredible 1,148 feet. By average depth, the entire Western Hemisphere and the Caribbean. It's a much better fit than we're all told about. reef, consisting entirely of welded silt. About 70,000 years ago, nearly 200 feet of foam stacks, andesite, and other volcanic materials fell really close to the vent while still very hot and liquid, allowing them to fuse together. Hot volcanic gases gave it its characteristic orange color, and a thick lava flow then pressed down on the pumice with tremendous pressure, making the duct that marks the castle even denser. It's at 1,300 feet above us and 400 feet below the rim. If you're struggling with a sense of scale, you can see that there are trees growing in front of the Those are mountain hemlock trees. Those are mountain hemlock trees, which are famously not only the same tree as the old man, which is 30 feet tall, but also they were the trees that were growing above you as you walked down Cleveland Trail today. Turning our attention back to the lake for a moment, I'm sure some of you have wondered if Crater Lake freezes over in the winter. The answer to that is typically no. It's not impossible, but it would take a prolonged stretch of cold that we don't experience here very often. Not Ice Age cold. In fact, the last time the lake froze over was in 1949. But there's another phenomenon that can occur here in the winter that's very important to the lake's ecosystem. Deep water mixing. Crater Lake is too deep and too cold to turn over regularly like most bodies of water. Instead, every conditions are just right for her. This happens when the water is a balmy 38 degrees Fahrenheit or 3 degrees Celsius. That's when the water's at its most dense. Normally, the cold water can sink below the warmer water on its own, but the warm water's column has the help of the great pressure that comes from the depth of Crater Lake and allows it to prevent the colder water from sinking through to the bottom. So along with the right temperature, we need a sustained high wind event that blows across the lake for several days. These high winds push the dense water up one side of the caldera, and the weight of all that dense water piled up in one area allows the colder water to push through and sink to the bottom, like the turning of a wheel or the rolling of. This mixing is important for the lake because water from the top carries oxygen down to the lake bottom, and water from the bottom carries nutrients up to the top. Without deep water mixing, the top of the lake would eventually be full of sterile dead zones, and the bottom of the lake would become anaerobic, meaning it has no oxygen. Which, as you can imagine, would be very unfortunate for all of the fish we put in this lake. It would also be really unfortunate for all the phytoplankton that all naturally live here, which may not sound like a large deal, but we actually have one of the most diverse phytoplankton populations in the world. The potential decline in deep water mixing is one of the biggest challenges facing Crater Lake today. As we've observed temperatures in this area warming, there's a concern that deep water mixing could become more and more rare, and the more pessimistic models say that it will stop altogether. Leaking. This place leaks about 2 million gallons of water per hour every day of the year, which sounds like it's an impossible number, like we would lose the lake immediately, but you need to understand that Crater Lake has a surface area of roughly 21 square miles and a volume of nearly 5 trillion gallons. So to keep this in perspective, 1 million seconds is about 11 days. 1 trillion seconds is 31,688 years. So there is enough water in Crater Lake for every single living human on Earth to take home a 600-gallon doggy bag with them. Just to change the lake level by a single inch requires more than 350 million gallons of water, or more than 1.13 billion liters. So if any of you were concerned about the roughly 8 or so bottle drops we do here a day affecting the lake level, don't be. It seeps out through the gaps in the rocks. This is basically a big pile of gravel, and once it seeps out, we're not really sure where it goes, because one of the ways that we recognize water is actually by its mineral content. And as you can imagine, filtering through a bunch of rocks can change that quite a bit. There is from the southern entrance station, some of you may have heard of the Wood River, its headwaters are about 15 minutes from the southern entrance station where it comes out from under the ground. It is a river that has a reputation for being incredibly clean and clear and very, very blue. The Klamath tribes believe that the Wood River is fueled directly by the water from Crater Lake, or better yet, as they know it, Giwas. Though we currently have no scientific evidence to back that up, but I will note we also didn't have scientific evidence to back up that this was a caldera for quite a while. The Klamath tribes have seen the way that this land has shaped and changed in ways that we cannot fathom. They've been here since time immemorial. So in the future, it is entirely possible that some scientific evidence will come out that will yet again back up what they've been telling us all along. But for now, where the water goes once it leaves the Palisades is a complete mystery. If anybody's wondering how we know how much water we're losing here every single hour, it's just math, which probably isn't that exciting, unless you're an engineer. If you're an engineer, get off my boat. Anyway, thanks to the Palisades, we have a remarkable equilibrium that fluctuates 1 to 3 feet per year on a typical year, which is good, because otherwise we'd overflow here now. That's the lowest point of the room right there. Fantastic, we've done it. Let's get out of here. Into the very rocks around us. So they came for the scenery, the adventure, or just a peaceful day on the water, which if you did, I'm so sorry. I hope you all enjoyed the peaceful day on the water. I hope you all can leave with a deeper appreciation for this one-of-a-kind place. Now, this would normally be the part where I would tease you guys about going up Cleveland Cove Trail and how it's 700 feet of elevation gain over 9 switchbacks. But I feel like we've all been doing enough. I should note there is no other way out. You do have to hike. No, you cannot take our tractor, and why would you want to? One person drives that a day. It's usually actually my father. And you could not pay me to drive that thing. Last year, my boss almost went over the edge. So just enjoy your hike up. At the very least, it's not super sunny, so the amount of heat exhaustion that you get from that should probably be offset by the rain. Maybe you'll be dry by the time you get to the top. I am so sorry about the weather. I highly encourage all of you a different summer to come to Crater Lake, preferably not asking to get rainy, and try and have another boat tour. If it hails on you again, it might be a you problem. The old man might have some personal problem with you. Oh yes, so Cleveland Cove Trail is going to close for a couple of years, probably. But here's the thing, it was supposed to close this year. To the point where we winterized our boats last year, we wrapped them in the special shrink wrap, and they told us we're not doing boat tours, we're not doing boat tours. Okay, maybe we'll open Cleveland Cove Trail, but we're not doing boat tours. Okay, you can do boat tours. So the general manager had to scramble to get everybody hired in time for this season, because they told her in February, and we had to have everybody hired by like April. And I know how much of a scramble it was. I watched it happen. She's my mom. The first person she called, because I actually have an interpreter certification. As I said earlier, this is not my main job. When they're working on the trail, they want to pack down the dirt, they want to rebuild the retaining walls and make them all the same. That are about to landslide already, just kind of make them landslide and get them out of the way. They would like to replace our little shack with a more permanent one, get rid of that old dock, replace our new dock with an even newer dock, and also change out the bathrooms, which would be so needed to happen. Everybody stay seated as Captain Rich titles to the dock. You guys have been so patient. I'm so sorry. Have a great climb up the hill.
Bài xưa Nó tố Trên đôi Tí na tí lối Sao có mô Bó ta Cứ sát ra lê Có tao lê đó
Believe it or not, I didn't skip that much of the script, at least the meat of it, so you guys got most of the information. Congratulations.
Đó, cái tớ thế ở bên nhân thật à
There we go. Alright, everybody is free to disembark. Have a great day. I'm so sorry.
Bên nhân có những gì Sát tao luôn
Yeah, I haven't laid it back up to the top. There's only one. All right, have a great day. Thank you.
nào chị luôn nào bây giờ hai chị đào bơm ta trên cao chị nào
Bag man behind you.
Oh gosh. Bài cờ hả? Cái mông là Tôm à Tôm à Tôi học cái mà bé trên cao là hay rồi rồi mấy bọn tao tí nào trên cao ra ơi ra nổi tí nào ok ok rồi này cho mấy trên cao tí nào rồi mua xấu nó này thì mà lên chín mấy rồi để ra này bây giờ tao kiếm một chị lại xưa xin xíu rồi này bye bye